Hello, everybody. Good evening. My name is Sai Kumar Boyne. I thank you all for joining into the session. Today, I'm going to give you a presentation on Docker. Basically, before I would be starting the presentation of the Docker, it would be even more. I would like to give you a brief introduction regarding the traditional approach which we are using before the Docker. What were the issues which we were facing in the past, and how Docker is more efficient and helps us to solve those issues. So coming to the traditional approach, basically we were using the virtual machine. We used to set up one or more multiple applications which are like interdependent among themselves. The the main disadvantage of using this particular approach was we had a host machine operating the system layer and the application which we want to use. For operating system layer, we used to dedicate more number of resources to run the application, and uh, Docker was able to avoid the operating system layer. Instead, it uses the Linux kernel and was working efficiently. Basically, in Docker, we could use more number of applications compared to the traditional approach. So that's one of the advantages. Apart from that, Docker Compose is used for Docker orchestration. Using the Docker Compose, we use we could build and run multiple Docker images at single go, and single application in one container. For example, like in Node.js, basically an application needs database in one container. Node.js application could run in another container. Database could run. Multiple containers can run with the following commands, such as like docker space run command as well as docker space compose command. And apart from that, coming to the introduction of the Docker, basically Docker helps you to resolve an issue of code working on dev environment and the same code not working on QA environment. Basically, when we intend to develop any particular software or add any new feature to the existing software, we would be having four different layers. That is design, development, deployment, and testing. Basically, Docker would be coming into the picture on the third phase, that is a deployment. Mainly, Docker makes the process of application deployment very easy and efficient. Apart from that, it even helps you to resolve a lot of issues related to the deployment of in any specific application. And Docker is one of the leading software container platform. Basically, in uh, Docker, the software stack, we would be containing four different layers that are the front-end components, back-end workers, database, environment, or the library dependencies. Basically, all these components work on wide range of platforms, and each of our components works on every platform possible where the application is being like intended or expected to run. Uh, Apart from that, every software component has to be compatible with every possible hardware where the application is like expected to run. It is very common to find in current date in many organizations that the developers as well as the operation people would be like spending lots of time as well as putting in lots of efforts, and so that they would be ensuring the software is going to work on the specific platform which they wanted to work. And coming to the before I would be giving you a brief introduction or like getting to the cuts of the Docker. I would I would like to give you an example so that you would be able to understand the Docker functionality in a simple way and in a layman terms. Basically, if you would be imagining a shipping industry, basically we are going to transport different kinds of goods, which would be consisting of different size, shapes, and requirement. Basically, to resolve this particular issue, we would be like using the containers. So if you would be imagining the containers, it basically keeps in all the goods inside a container, and that container would be shipped to many locations, whichever the final destination is, if you, in such a manner, basically Docker is a tool which is mainly designed to make it easier to deploy and run application by using the containers, and containers basically allows a developer to package up all the application with all of its requirements and needs, such as like libraries, other dependencies, and later on it would be like shipping out all at one single package, all into one single package. A developer will package all the software and components to a box, which we call as a container, and Docker will take care of shipping this particular container to all possible platforms in a standard manner. Now, if we could like conclude that there is a clear separation of concerns of a developer, basically the developer would only be focusing on creating the code and the software. And basically this particular code or software would be packaged inside a container, and that software along with all its dependencies would be shipped or moved into a container, and they wouldn't be like concerned about how will this be deployed and what all platforms it would be deployed and so on. In this fashion, basically Docker makes this process of deploying the software very easy, efficient, and even more simpler. That's the way it is. This is the basic introduction regarding the Docker. So coming to here, if you would be viewing here, basically a Docker is a container-based virtualization, uses the kernel on host operating system to run multiple guest instances. And each guest instance is referred to as a container. And this particular container-based virtualization uses the kernel on the host and each container, Basically, Docker container would be like it's basically nothing but an isolated application platform which contains everything needed to run an application, and it's based on one or more images. That's the way it is. Docker images. Basically, Docker images are like a read-only template used for the creation of containers. It helps you to build it can be built by any user, and stored either on Docker Hub or on the local registry. You know, Docker file. Docker file is basically used for the purpose of describing the series of steps which are needed to create a Docker image. And Docker file is an automation of Docker image creation. It's mainly a container platform. That's the way it is. Coming to the architecture of the Docker, basically when a developer would be developing a software, it is moved onto the Docker file. Basically, it defines application dependencies and requirements inside a file. And this particular Docker file would be moved towards the Docker image. At this point in time, you have the application dependencies and requirements. From Docker image, we would be either moving it to the Docker hub or the Docker container. Basically, in Docker container, we have application with all its dependencies, whereas on the Docker hub, it's basically a online cloud repository. And at this point in time, we basically pull the image and resolve the platform issues, inside which we are going to contain the Docker image in the Docker thing too. These are some of the important syntaxes which are being used in the Docker. Maybe you could go through it. So basically at this point in time, I'm going to explain you how do we install a Docker into a Mac. So basically I have gone into the Docker and typed on the Google as Docker installation. If you would be viewing here, I have clicked on the first icon. Then it has migrated to this particular page. At this point in time, I have clicked on get started. From here, I have clicked on to this thing that is download for the Mac Intel chip and downloaded it. After that, you're going to be migrated over here. You would be then you have to click on the application. After that, you would be accepting the terms. From there, you have to click on accept. Then you You have to like basically get into the terminal and check the Docker version after the installation on the local machine with the help of command, that is a Docker space version command, which basically gives you the entire details regarding the version. And then you have to enter the Docker space info command, which gives you the complete information. From there, you have to use the other command, that is Docker space minus space hello world command, which basically helps you with the this particular things, that is pulling latest pulling from the library and so on, whether the pull is complete or not. After that, you have to type as Docker space images. Basically, with the help of this particular command, it gives you the image which was been created in the repository. For example, if you would be viewing here, the image the repository is hello hyphen world, whereas the image ID is given over here. And when was it created means 3 months ago. The size of it is this, and the tag is latest. That's the way we would be installing it on the Mac. Now I'm going to show you how do we install a Docker onto our Linux. Basically, when you intend to install it on your Linux, basically you have to go to the Google and type it as AWS free tier. After it is going to take you to here. You have to click on the first link. Once you'll be clicking on the first link, it's going to migrate you to this particular page. You have to click on create a free account. Then it's going to take you to another page that is over here. Basically, if you would be viewing here, it basically gives you the list of instances which are present, and the uh, what is the you could check in whichever instance which you wanted to use. And for example, I have used Linux space April thing. That's the instance which I have used. At this point in time, you once you would be connect, you have to click on the connect. One after giving it as connect, you have to check whether it's been connecting or whether the Linux instance is getting connected or not. After here, you have to click on this particular button, that is a standalone SSH client. Then you have to connect to the Linux instance. For that, if you would be getting into the terminal, you have to use this particular command, that is union space hyphen R. That's a prerequisite. And it's going to give you the information regarding the operating system and the kernel version. After that, you have to use this command, so that is so that you would be updating the packages. That is sudo space em space hyphen y space update. Then it's going to update packages. For that, you could use other command, that is sudo space yum space install space hyphen y space docker. Then you have to use a docker command. Basically, it gives you all the commands for the docker, and with the help of and after that, to check the docker version, you could use a docker space hyphen version command. Then if you intend to start the Docker, you have to use the command, that is sudo space server space docker space start. At this point in time, you could see the Docker has started. If there is a situation after that, if you want to know the complete information regarding the Docker, you could use a command as docker space info. If you want to check the images, you could use a docker space images command. Then if you could use a docker space ps space hyphen a command. With the help of this, you could check the details of the container, image, command name, and whether it's created or not. And so on. After that, you could use a sudo space service space docker space stop. If at all at any point in time you intend to stop the Docker, then you would be using the stop command. And after that, if you would be using sudo space yum space remove docker, it's going to remove the Docker from your Linux machine. That's the way we would be installing the Linux onto our, I mean the Docker onto our Linux. And some of the most important advantages of using the Docker is like basically it helps you like build once. That is nothing but once a application. For example, like with Docker, you test your application inside a container and ship it inside a container. Basically that means the environment in which you test is like very much identical to the one which application will run in the production environment too. That's the way it is. And put container. Basically, container usage is like it's like it helps you to maintain the. I'm sorry. Build once is nothing but basically you're going to build it for once and use it number of times whichever you wanted to use. Whereas a container usage is the one with the which means the environment which you have built is identical to the one which the application is going to run on production environment. The third one is like portability. Portability is like basically it's a platform independent in Docker, where it helps the version control thing, and isolation is also possible. Every application works in its own container and does not interfere with the other application. This is the way isolation is possible, and that's it from my end. I request you to please do use a comment section if you have got any kind of doubts, so that I could definitely respond to you. Thank you for your time. Thank you.